They thought I was done. My son laughed and said I was getting soft in my old age, like I'd forgotten how to say no. My daughter didn't laugh. She just looked me in the eye and said I had a responsibility, that I owed it to them. For the years I spent under a roof someone else paid for. For the meals I never skipped so they wouldn't skip theirs. I remember just standing there, hearing them say it like it was settled, like I didn't have a choice. They needed help with a house. Young couple. Big dreams. Small credit. So they called their backup plan me. I signed those papers with hands that shook, not from fear, but from memory. All the years I gave. All the ways I'd tried to be what they needed. I told myself it was love, that helping them start fresh would give me peace. I told myself a lot of things. But then, Thanksgiving came. No call, no card, no seat saved for me at their shiny new table. The house I helped build brick by brick with my name on the line didn't even have room for a text. Not a, "We're thinking of you." Not a slice of pie on the porch. Just silence. I sat at my own table. Folded napkin. Empty plate. The turkey I didn't cook. And I realized something. I wasn't helping them build a future. I was erasing my own. Brick by brick. They had used my name, my savings, and my silence to build a house I'd never be welcome in. So I made a call. Quiet, quick, legal. I still had my name on that mortgage. Still had just enough strength in these tired hands to sign one more paper. They thought I was done. I wasn't. I was starting. I wasn't born with much. And after I had them, I had even less. But I made it work. Somehow. I was 23 when I had my son. 26 when my daughter came. Their father was halfway gone before he even left. Some days he'd come home with liquor on his breath and nothing in his pockets. Other days he just didn't come home at all. So I stopped waiting. I learned to do it alone. I cooked. I cleaned. I kept the lights on and the doors locked when they slept soundly in the warmth. They never knew what I pawned to keep the gas running. Never saw me stitching my work shoes back together with dental floss. When the fridge looked empty, I made magic out of broth and rice. When school picture day came, I ironed their shirts flat with a pot full of boiling water. We didn't have much, but they always looked neat. Fed, loved. There were nights I didn't eat, not because I was dieting, because I needed that money for their shoes. Kids grow fast, and the world doesn't slow down for tight budgets. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with overdue bills in one hand and a broken pencil in the other, trying to make numbers do tricks they weren't built for. But I always found a way. A little extra cleaning on the weekends. Babysitting someone else's baby while mine played quietly in the corner. Christmases were small, but warm. I wrapped dollar store toys in leftover newspaper, tied them with yarn from my sewing basket. I'd stay up past midnight just to see their faces light up in the morning. That was enough for me. Their joy, their laughter. It filled up the corners where love used to leak out. I never had manicures. Or vacations. My idea of a treat was sitting down for 5 minutes before another shift. I didn't complain. Didn't expect medals. That's what mothers did, right? Gave and kept giving. And I was proud of it. Proud that they grew up and had more than I ever did. I watched my daughter walk across that graduation stage, and I clapped like a fool, cried into a napkin. My son got his first job and bought himself a used car, and I stood by the window, watching him drive off, telling myself it was okay he didn't look back. That's what we raised them for, I told myself. To leave. When they got married, I wore the same dress to both weddings. No one noticed. I smiled in every photo, paid for the cake, gave speeches with my throat tight, gave cash I didn't really have. That's what love looked like to me. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that folds towels and picks up prescriptions and remembers which cereal they like. There were times they called me crying. She had a baby on the way. He lost a job. I always answered, always offered. Even when my fridge was bare again. Even when my joints screamed from mopping floors that weren't mine. I kept giving. So when they asked me to cosign, I didn't blink. I thought this is what all those years were for. So they'd never have to sleep in the cold. So they'd never have to stretch $2 across a week. I thought maybe this is how I finally matter again. I didn't ask for anything back, just hoped they'd remember who lit the path behind them, who kept it burning when the wind howled through every crack. But hope doesn't pay interest, and love, when unreturned, can turn to something else, something colder, something sharper. They called it help. I called it history repeating. Only this time, I wasn't the one disappearing. I was the one watching who they became once they got what they needed. Once they believed I couldn't take anything back, they said they needed a favor. I thought it was for their future. I didn't see it as a trap. It started with little things. A missed phone call, a bill they said they mailed but didn't, a visit they promised, then forgot. But I told myself they were just busy. Everyone's busy these days, right? That's what I said out loud. Even as the silence got louder, they'd ask for help like it was normal. Like I hadn't just given last week. Just until Friday, Ma. It's just a cosign, not real money. You'd do this if you really wanted us to have a better life. They never yelled, but their words pressed down, heavy and certain, like there wasn't room for me to say no. I remember when they first brought up the house. My daughter leaned across the kitchen table, her hand on mine, smiling soft. My son stood behind her, nodding like it was all figured out. "We'll make the payments," she said. "It's all in our name, you're just the backup." Backup! Like I was a spare tire. Not a person. Not the one who raised them when no one else would. I had questions. Of course I did. But they had answers. Polished ones. Fast ones. Like they'd practiced. "It's safe. You won't have to do a thing. We'd never let it fall back on you." And I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe in them. I told myself they weren't the kind of people who'd take advantage. Not my children. Not after everything. But the paper they gave me to sign felt thick. Too many pages. Too many words I didn't understand. They brushed it off. "It's just legal stuff, Ma. You don't need to worry about that part." My stomach turned. But I smiled. I didn't want to seem suspicious. I didn't want to seem old. After the house was theirs, the calls changed. Less frequent. Shorter. When I called, it always went to voicemail. "Sorry, we're swamped. Crazy week, talk soon." But soon turned into maybe later. And later never came. They still asked for things. Could I help with the baby? Could I pick up groceries? Just this once. Could I loan a little to cover that surprise water bill? They always said loan, but it was never repaid. Not once. Still, I gave. I kept giving. I told myself this was just a rough patch, that things would even out. Then came the birthday. Mine. No card, no call. Not even a message on that phone they held like a second skin. I sat by the window that morning, sipping tea that had gone cold. Watched the mail come and go. Nothing. It wasn't that I wanted gifts. I just wanted to be seen. I asked my daughter about it gently. Just a whisper of a question. "Oh, we meant to call. Things got crazy." Her voice sounded flat, like an excuse printed on repeat. Like my birthday was an errand she forgot to run. There was a time she would cry if she thought she'd hurt me. Now she barely looked up from her phone. And still, I kept faith. Told myself maybe they were stressed. Maybe being young parents was harder than they let on. Maybe I was being too sensitive. It's easy to convince yourself of anything when your heart's invested. And mine had been, for decades. Then came the first late notice. A letter with my name on it. From the bank. I called her right away. "Oh, that must be a mistake," she said. "We paid it. I'll check." But weeks passed. Another notice came. I asked again. She snapped. "Ma, I told you. We've got it under control." Under control. That's what she said. But my gut said otherwise. I started checking online. Quietly. Slowly. I learned how to read the loan site. The red numbers didn't lie. They were missing payments. Falling behind. I brought it up one last time. Face to face. They looked at me like I was being dramatic. Like I didn't understand how mortgages worked. "You worry too much," my son said, shaking his head. "Let us handle our business." Their business. My name. I left that night feeling small, like an outsider in a story I helped write. I told myself to hold on. that they'd come around, that they'd remember. But inside, I felt something shift, like a string pulling loose. The doubts I had buried were rising now, whispering things I didn't want to hear. Still, I held on, because hope, once planted, doesn't leave easily. Even when the soil turns bitter, even when the roots ache, I always thought betrayal would come loud. A slammed door, a final fight. But it didn't. It came soft, smiling, like family. The mortgage came due, real due. Not just another late fee, the kind of due that brings men in pressed shirts and firm voices. I got the letter. Thick envelope, red ink. It said, "Final notice." Said my name over and over, like I was the one who'd failed. Like I was the one who disappeared. I sat at the kitchen table, holding it in both hands. The same table where I'd served birthday cakes, bandaged skinned knees, filled out school forms in the dark. The same table where she asked me to cosign right after hugging me and calling me the glue. That word stuck in my chest like a stone. I called, left a message, then another. Finally, she answered. Said it wasn't a big deal. Said they were working something out. I asked what that meant. She didn't like the question. It's not your business anymore, Ma. We got this. Not my business. My name. My credit. My roof on the line. But not my business. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. Just nodded into the silence like I could somehow make it true. Hung up. Stared at the quiet hum of the fridge like it might answer. Then came Thanksgiving. They'd said they were keeping it small this year. Just the 4 of them. Next year, we'll do it big again, Ma. You understand, right? Of course I did. I always understood. I still cooked. Old habit. Just a little something. 1 sweet potato. Some greens. A turkey breast instead of the whole bird. I set the table anyway. Folded the napkin. Lit the candle. Left the chair across from mine empty. Just in case. But they didn't call. Not even a text. No, thinking of you. No, happy Thanksgiving. Nothing. I told myself maybe they were caught up in the day. Maybe the baby was fussy. Maybe the phone died. But I knew. I saw them. From the window. Their driveway's not far from mine, just a stretch across the cul-de-sac. And they were out there, laughing, passing plates through the car window to friends, drinks in hand, the house full of light. Their house, the one I helped them get. They didn't see me standing there. Or maybe they did, and didn't care. I don't know which hurts more. My daughter wore the sweater I gave her last Christmas. My son waved goodbye to someone, keys in hand, proud smile on his face. And I stood behind the curtain like a ghost in my own life. They were fine, full, celebrating. And I was here, with their debt in my name, with their silence ringing louder than any slap could. I felt humiliated. Not because of the money. I've lived poor before. I can live poor again. It was the way they made me small, disposable. Like the parts of me they once needed were no longer useful. Like I'd done my job and was meant to quietly step off the stage. I kept thinking, maybe it's a phase. Maybe they'll come around. But that hope, it started to rot, heavy in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed, hands folded, eyes open to the dark. I remembered every sacrifice. Every night I worked late. Every birthday I went without so they could have a party. Every lie I told myself just to keep going. I thought those things added up to love, to loyalty. But maybe they just made me convenient. The next day, I checked the mortgage again. No payments made. More warnings. More risk. I sat in the quiet, trying to breathe. They took everything. Smiling. Wearing love like a mask. Borrowed my name, my credit, my faith. And when it suited them, they vanished. I watched them from the window, laughing in the driveway, knowing they'd left me holding the mortgage, holding the mess, holding the weight they never planned to carry. And something inside me broke. Not loud, just a slow, quiet crack, like ice giving way underfoot. I stood there for a long time, one hand on the curtain, one foot in the past. I wasn't sure what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't do it again. They thought I was quiet, but I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sulking. I was reading. Late into the night, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I once braided my daughter's hair and helped my son with math homework. Now it held the mortgage papers. Bank letters. Folders filled with numbers and legal words they never expected me to understand. But I did. I made myself. At first, the pages looked like a foreign language. Long sentences. Loopholes. Footnotes in small gray print. But I read every one. Slowly. Underlined things I didn't recognize. Wrote questions in the margins. I brewed black coffee at 9 p.m. and stayed up past midnight with a blanket over my shoulders and a pencil in my hand. I wasn't screaming. I was writing. Because somewhere in all those words, beneath the interest rates and clause numbers, I found something. My name. My power. They had used it, but they had also underestimated it. They said it wasn't really my house, just my name on paper. But the law said different. The law said my name held weight. And suddenly, the thing that made me vulnerable also gave me control. I found a lawyer. Not one of those slick young men who talk too fast and forget your name number. This one was older, patient. She wore her gray hair pulled back tight and looked me in the eye when I spoke. She didn't interrupt. She listened. Then she said, "You've got a case." She walked me through it all, page by page, clause by clause. She never once made me feel small. And when I hesitated, when I asked, "Is this too much?" she just leaned in and said, "Not after what they did." It felt strange, being believed. Like I'd been underwater and didn't know I was drowning until someone handed me air. We didn't rush. We built. Carefully. Quietly. Every email. Every letter. Every bank notice. I kept it all. Made a folder on my desk. Labeled it Truth. Because that's what this was about now. Not revenge. Not anger. Just truth. And ownership. I stopped calling them. Stopped waiting for apologies that were never coming. I learned how to check public records. Tracked their missed payments. Noted the lien warnings they ignored. I saw everything. They thought I didn't know how to use a computer. I let them believe it. I wasn't confused. I was calculating. I looked up the exact terms of our agreement. Saw the clause that allowed me, as a cosigner with legal interest, to initiate the sale. Saw that my credit was tied to the property. And if I wanted out, I had the right to make it happen. It wasn't simple, but it was possible. And once I knew that, I stopped feeling like a victim. I stopped staring out the window. I started moving. Every day, I did one small thing. Called the bank, scheduled meetings, made copies, read legal forums. Sometimes I'd take a walk after. Let the wind hit my face. Let the air remind me I was still here, still able, still sharp. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my neighbor. Not the lady from church. Definitely not my kids. They thought I was quiet, that I had rolled over, but I was busy drawing up papers. The lawyer helped me write the sale notice, helped me follow every rule, cross every T. I wanted no loopholes, no shouting matches, no drama, just facts, just actions. And deep down, I knew they'd be shocked, because they thought I didn't have it in me. They thought I was soft, old, that I'd stay in the corner they left me in. But they forgot something. I raised them with grit. I survived storms they'll never understand. And quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet is planning. Quiet is power without permission. So while they laughed in their big kitchen, passing mashed potatoes under lights I paid for, I was writing. I was signing. I was setting things in motion they wouldn't see until it was too late. I didn't want to hurt them, but I also wasn't going to let them hurt me again. The lawyer sent the notice on a Wednesday. I remember because I was folding laundry. Just 2 towels and a set of sheets, enough for one person, not a family. My hands didn't shake. I just watched the printer spit out the final version, signed and sealed, mailed to the bank. Emailed to them, the house they thought they'd own slipped out of their fingers while they were waiting for me to beg. There was no warning, no fight, no screaming at the door, just paperwork. filed cleanly, legally. I didn't need their permission. My name was still on the deed, my credit still tied to the loan, and they had broken the terms. Missed payments, ignored notices, let the roof sag while they smiled for holiday pictures on the front porch. So I took it all back, quietly. The bank moved fast once they realized I was serious. The sale went through in less than 6 weeks. The market was good. The neighborhood still looked nice from the outside. Buyers don't ask about family betrayals, they just want granite counters and walk-in closets. I got just enough from the sale to cover the missed payments, clear the debt, and tuck a little away. Not a fortune, but freedom. Real, clean freedom. The kind you feel deep in your bones when no one can call and say, "Ma, can you just cover this one thing?" I didn't tell them where I went. I didn't owe them that. I used part of the proceeds to rent a little place about 30 miles away. Small, simple, just mine. A 1-bedroom apartment with good sunlight and a quiet view. No lawn to mow. No baby toys on the floor. No waiting by the phone for a call that wouldn't come. I bought new sheets, a kettle I liked, a chair that fit my back right. No hand-me-downs. No old furniture filled with old memories. Just space. Clean space. Moving day came and went without a word from them. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I just left. And it felt like shedding a heavy coat in summer, strange at first, but light, free. They didn't call. Not until the realtor's sign went up in the yard and the papers hit their inbox. Then the messages came. "Ma, what's going on? Did you sell the house?" You can't just do that. But I could. And I did. With the same hands that once held their tiny heads, I signed the forms that reminded them whose name carried weight. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence speak. Let the lesson sit. When I did answer, I kept it short. I protected my name. You should have protected the trust that came with it. They didn't reply after that. I heard through a cousin they had to move into a rental, that their credit took a hit, that they were telling people I blindsided them, that I was unwell. Let them say what they want. I've been called worse. The truth is, I had been unwell. Unwell with the ache of being used, with the guilt of doubting them, with the shame of loving people who looked me in the eye and lied. But not anymore. Now I wake up and the air feels different. Still. Mine. I water a few plants. Read the paper. I pay my rent early. No debt collectors. No pleading texts. No waiting. I didn't need to raise my voice. Didn't need to slam doors or call names. I just read the fine print. Trusted the law. Trusted my gut. They thought I was too old to fight. Too soft to stand up. But they forgot where they came from. I taught them how to speak, how to walk, how to survive. They just didn't expect me to use those lessons for myself. I took it all back, quietly. And that silence, it's the sweetest thing I've ever heard. They came knocking, but I was already gone. The house? Gone too. It took them a while to realize it wasn't a bluff. That the emails weren't warnings, but a final move. They must have thought I'd change my mind, that I'd break, like I always did, the moment they called me Ma, with that soft guilt in their voice. But I didn't. Not this time. They came to the house 2 days after the sale closed. I heard it from the agent. Said they pulled up fast, confused, loud, standing in the driveway like it was still theirs. But it wasn't. Not legally. Not morally. Not in any way that mattered. They called me 10 times that day. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I'd already said everything I had to say. In ink. In legal documents. In boundaries they never thought I'd draw. The voicemail started nice. "We didn't know it was that bad, Ma. We can fix this." Then came the panic. "Where are you staying? You can't just vanish." Then anger. "You had no right. That was our house." No right. That was the phrase that stuck with me. No right. After everything I gave, everything I was, they still saw me as optional, as backup, as the one who'd clean up behind them, quietly, forever. But they never once asked if I was okay. They didn't ask what it cost me, the credit hit, the worry. The nights reading legal codes with a flashlight under the blanket because I didn't want to admit how afraid I was. They didn't come see me when the foreclosure notices had my name in bold. Didn't offer to take the mortgage back. Didn't even send me a card on my last birthday. But now, suddenly, they needed me again. And I wasn't there. That was the revenge. Not yelling. Not lawsuits. Not slamming doors. Just not being there when they finally realized what I was worth. I heard they tried to reverse the sale, but they couldn't. I followed the rules. Every step. The lawyer made sure of it. Their names were on the mortgage, not the deed. They'd missed enough payments to trigger action. I had the legal right, but more than that, I had the moral right. I had the earned right. I sold it. I didn't ask for their blessing. Didn't explain myself in long, emotional messages. I just did what had to be done. And it hurt. Of course it did. You don't carry people for 30, 40 years and not feel the weight of letting go. But sometimes letting go isn't cruelty. It's survival. I didn't slam the door in their faces. I just wasn't behind it anymore. I moved my things with no fanfare, quiet as snow, left behind the fake plants they bought to spruce up the place, took only what belonged to me, what still had meaning. The quilt I made when I was pregnant with my daughter, a photo of my son when he was 5, before his eyes turned cold with pride, my cast iron skillet, my wedding ring, though I hadn't worn it in years. They showed up at my old door with open mouths and empty hands, but it was too late. Too late to explain. Too late to apologize. Too late to pretend they hadn't watched me drown while sipping wine in their borrowed kitchen. They underestimated me. Thought I was just the woman in the background, the one who shows up with casseroles, who never asks for anything, who always forgives. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetfulness. And love, real love, doesn't leave someone to hold a sinking ship alone. I left them with what they gave me, silence. And I carried what I earned, peace. I didn't yell, I sold it. The first week, they called every day. My phone lit up with names I used to cherish. My girl, baby boy. I used to smile when I saw those names. Now, I just watched them appear and disappear, like clouds passing. I didn't answer. Not once. The voicemails stacked up. I listened to the first few, just to see. Ma, please, we didn't think you'd actually do it. I don't know where you are, but you can't just vanish. You blindsided us. We have kids, Ma. You could have at least thought of the kids. The guilt was thick in their voices. That slow, syrupy kind of guilt that drips when charm stops working. But guilt only works when you still feel responsible. And I didn't anymore. They told me I owed them more. I told them silently, clearly that I'd already paid enough. In years. In meals. In rent. In silence. They didn't say sorry. Not once. Not in the calls. Not in the texts. Not even a half-hearted. We didn't mean to hurt you. Just confusion. Anger. Hurt that they'd lost their safety net. And maybe they were hurt. Maybe they felt abandoned. But that feeling, that's mine. I've lived with it longer than they've known how to spell it. I was abandoned in a quiet kitchen when my birthday passed without a call. I was forgotten when the mortgage notices stacked higher than my grocery list. I was left behind when they toasted champagne under the roof I helped buy, while I sat alone with cold coffee and an unpaid light bill. Now they wanted to talk, but I was done talking. I changed my number 2 weeks after the sale closed. Gave the new one to a few friends. The good ones. People who remember to ask how I'm doing without needing anything in return. My cousin said my daughter showed up at the old church asking about me. Saturday in the pew, with her arms crossed like a kid sent to detention. I just want to understand, she kept saying. But understanding doesn't come after the damage. It should have come before the ink dried on the loan, before the missed birthdays, before they used my kindness like a ladder and then kicked it away. They didn't want understanding. They wanted access. And that door is closed. There's no rage in me. No heat. Just distance. A clean, calm space where the storm used to live. I used to cry every time they hurt me. Now I just breathe. In and out. No bitterness. Just a quiet knowing. They don't know where I live now. I like it that way. My mailbox only holds bills I actually owe. No letters with threats. No envelopes with fear tucked inside. I went to the farmer's market last weekend. Bought fresh strawberries and honey. Saturday on a bench in the sun. Watched children laugh and older couples share sandwiches without saying much. That used to be me, always speaking, always offering. Now, I just sit. I just am. They say I cut them off. Maybe that's true. But I never slammed the door. I just stopped opening it. They say I broke the family. But I was never the one who stepped on trust like a rug. They say I should have talked to them first. But I spent years talking. Years waiting for them to see me, to hear me. They weren't listening then. They're only listening now. Because the money's gone. Because the house is gone. Because I'm gone. It's funny. I used to fear being forgotten. Now I treasure it. There's power in not being reachable, in choosing peace over guilt, in saying, that's enough, and meaning it. The phone still rings sometimes. New numbers now. Messages from voices I used to know, like my own. We didn't mean it like that. We're family. You'll regret this one day. But I won't. I regret staying quiet for so long. I regret waiting for people to become someone they showed me over and over they weren't. And now, I don't pick up. I always thought I was the problem. The extra. The burden. When the calls stopped, when the holidays came and went without my name spoken, I used to wonder, what did I do wrong? I'd replay conversations in my mind, searching for the moment I asked for too much. Or not enough. I thought maybe I was too soft, too present, too giving, that maybe they didn't love me because I made it too easy to take. But now, I see it clearer. I wasn't the burden. I was the foundation. I was just the one holding their weight. They stood tall because I crouched low. They ran far because I stayed behind, watching the kids, covering the bills, sewing the seams. And I did it without question, without resentment. I gave and gave because I believed that's what mothers do, what women do, what love does. But giving without being seen? That's not love. That's erasure. I used to confuse the two. Now I don't. I look back at the life I built, not the house, not the money, but the real one. The life made of late-night fevers and packed lunches and sacrifices no one saw. And I realize I was never weak. I was just quiet. And sometimes, quiet looks like weakness to those who only understand noise. But there's a strength in silence, in endurance, in still standing after everything. I know that now. I don't regret loving them. I don't even regret helping. That was honest. From my heart. But I do regret not loving myself with the same urgency, not realizing sooner that my worth wasn't measured by how useful I was to others. For so long, I lived through them. Their milestones. Their plans. Their needs. I didn't even notice when my own dreams got buried beneath their futures. I remember once, years ago, I mentioned wanting to take a train across the country. Just once. To see the red canyons and blue lakes out the window. My daughter laughed. Said, "You're not the traveling type, Ma." And I believed her. Like she knew me better than I knew myself. She didn't. She only knew the version of me that had never said no. But there's more to me than casseroles and co-signatures. Now I sit at my own table. Alone, yes, but free. I brew tea just the way I like it. I watch the birds outside my window. I write little notes in the margins of my books. I take long walks and sometimes stop to admire a flower without having to explain why. And I've started looking at train tickets again. Just looking, for now. But it's enough. I don't check my phone waiting for messages. I don't pace the floor wondering if I've been forgotten. I don't shrink anymore. There's peace in knowing I did everything I could. There's peace in no longer trying to fix what doesn't want to be mended. Sometimes, healing looks like distance. Sometimes, freedom is found in a quiet apartment with no framed family photos and no one calling for help. Just stillness, just air. They may never understand why I did what I did. They might carry anger. Tell stories where I'm the villain. That's fine. Let them. I've spent too many years carrying stories that didn't belong to me. Let them carry this one. I know my truth. I know I gave everything I had. And then some. I know the love I offered was real. And I know, finally, that being alone is not the same as being unloved. Sometimes it's just the first time you're finally loving yourself. Maybe I wasn't the burden after all. Maybe I was just the backbone. And now, I walk tall on my own. They thought I was alone, but I wasn't. I was surrounded by women who'd lived their own quiet storms. It started small. A nod in the grocery line. A comment at the library. "You're looking lighter these days. You moved, didn't you?" And slowly, the stories began to unfold. Not shouted, not dramatic, just spoken soft like breath. One woman told me how she raised her grandson after her daughter disappeared into addiction. She'd spent 5 years sleeping on the couch, giving him the only bedroom. "He doesn't call now," she said, eyes dry. "But I still keep his graduation photo by the stove." Another woman, widowed at 55, worked 2 cleaning jobs to help her son start his business. "He bought a new car before he paid me back," she said, folding her hands. So, I stopped waiting. These weren't bitter women. They weren't angry. They were aware, awake to what they'd carried, and tired of pretending they were okay with it. We didn't start a club. We didn't need one. Our bond was already there in the shared glances. The sighs, the way we all paused when someone said, "But they're your children," because we'd heard that line too many times, as if blood excuses everything, as if motherhood means permanent sacrifice. But we know better now. There are more of us than they know. Women who gave up shoes for school supplies, who fed others before feeding themselves, who were told they were selfish the moment they asked for space. And one by one, we're waking up. We're changing phone numbers. We're taking trips. We're saying no without guilt, and yes without asking permission. We're selling houses, closing accounts, protecting what's left of our peace like it's gold. Some of us still hurt, still cry in the quiet. But we don't cry alone anymore. We sit together now at coffee shops, in waiting rooms, in the back pew at church, and we see each other, really see each other. And that's enough. It's not about revenge. It's not about teaching anyone a lesson. It's about coming home to ourselves, about knowing that our worth was never in the meals we cooked or the money we lent. It was in our presence, our strength, our survival. They thought I was alone, but I was part of something bigger, a sisterhood of quiet warriors. And we're still here, still standing, still loving just differently now, carefully, with eyes open and hearts guarded, not closed. And when I see one of us starting to doubt herself, I lean in and say what I wish someone had told me sooner. "You're not wrong for needing rest. You're not selfish for wanting peace. You are not alone." They thought I'd die with nothing left. No house, no savings, no voice. Just a faded robe, a chipped teacup, and maybe a few old photos no one would bother to frame. They were wrong. I didn't die bitter. I didn't die empty. I died with more than they'll ever have. It started the day I walked into the attorney's office and asked to revise my will. She looked up, kind and curious, and I said it plain. They don't get a dime. Not out of hate, out of truth. They'd already taken what they wanted, my help, my trust, my name. And when I needed something back, even just a little grace, they gave me absence, silence. So I returned the favor, with ink. I left what I had, my little savings, my modest account, my grandmother's ring to someone who saw me, not out of obligation, but love. A neighbor's daughter who checks on me twice a week, brings soup when it rains, reads to me without watching the clock. She calls me Miss Eloise, tells me I smell like lavender and baked bread. She hugged me on Christmas when no one else came. She gets the rest, and she'll know why. I wrote a letter to go with the will, not angry, just true. I wrote about the house, the mortgage, the silence. I wrote about the day I realized love without respect is just manipulation in prettier clothes. I wrote about how I didn't stop loving them. I just started loving myself more. They won't see that letter until I'm gone. And maybe they'll cry. Maybe they won't. But they'll know. They'll know that the woman they thought would crumble turned her last years into a quiet triumph. That while they were busy avoiding my calls, I was building something for myself, something small but real, clean, Free. I made funeral arrangements already. Nothing big, no gold casket, no long speeches. Just a little music and a few flowers I picked out myself. Simple ones. Real ones. Not plastic. The kind that die honestly. I don't expect them to come. If they do, I hope they sit in the back. Quiet. Thinking. I hope the silence teaches them what words never could. And when the will is read, I hope the truth lands softly, like dust settling on old wood, that I wasn't invisible, that I had something to give, that I had the final word, not in anger, not to punish, but to set the record right. They'll learn my name in the will, not just the name they used when they wanted something ma, mom, mama, number. They'll learn Eloise Marie Carter, the woman who stitched their childhoods together, the woman who fed them with empty pockets, who gave them the roof they celebrated under while she sat alone with cold turkey and no call, the woman who took it all back and smiled while doing it. That's my legacy. Not revenge, not bitterness. Clarity, peace, freedom wrapped in soft paper and signed in quiet strength. They thought I'd die with nothing left, but I died with my head high, my name intact, and a story worth telling. That's more than most. That's enough for me. They sent white roses, big, expensive ones, wrapped in silver paper, tied with a satin bow, the kind that look thoughtful in photos, the kind that say, "Look what we did," more than "look what we mean." There was no note at first, just my name on the little card. Love always. No signature, but I knew who it was from. A week later came the letter, typed, not even handwritten. "We're sorry for how things turned out. We wish you would have told us how you felt before doing what you did. You didn't give us a chance." A chance? I gave them 1,000. Every missed call, every ignored message, every birthday they forgot, every holiday they skipped, every bill they left in my name, like a weight I was supposed to carry without complaint. They had years, and I had silence. Now they wanted a clean ending. A pretty ribbon on something they shattered with their carelessness. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted relief. So I sent the flowers back, boxed them up, wrapped them in the same silver paper, wrote a note of my own. "Return to sender. Keep the petals. I've already had the thorns." They sent another bouquet after that. White lilies this time. A condolence flower. Almost theatrical, as if I had died and they were mourning the idea of me. Not the real woman. Just the role I used to play the quiet mother who absorbed everything and asked for nothing. But I'm not that woman anymore. I didn't die bitter, but I didn't die blind either. They kept trying. Cards. A voicemail. One even said, "We're doing therapy now. We've changed." I sat with that message for a long time. Listened to it twice. 3 times. Not because I believed it, but because I wanted to see if I felt anything. I didn't. Not anger, not pain, not even relief. Just a soft, solid no in my chest. I thought of all the times I begged them silently to see me, to call, to ask if I was okay. They didn't. Not until something was taken away. Not until the money dried up. The house was gone. My name, finally out of their reach. They loved the giver, not the woman. They loved the roof I provided, the meals I cooked, the way I stayed quiet when they were careless. But they never loved me enough to protect me. And now they want to be seen trying. They want to tell people, "We reached out. We sent flowers. We did our part." But love isn't performance. And guilt wrapped in ribbon still smells like guilt. So I sent everything back. Roses, lilies, the cards with too many words and not enough meaning. I kept the boxes. They're sturdy, useful, unlike the gestures. I'm not unkind. I'm just done. Done carrying blame that was never mine. Done offering chances to people who treat them like favors. Done explaining my pain to people who only hear what makes them feel better. They sent white roses. I mailed back thorns. They may never understand, but they don't have to, because I do. I rented a little cottage just outside town. White shutters, chipped at the edges. A porch swing that creaks like an old song. 1 bedroom, 1 key, And for the first time in a long, long while, it was enough. I planted tomatoes out back. Didn't know if they'd take the soil, look tired, dry in some places. But I dug in anyway. Hands in the dirt, knees sore. Sunday on my back. No one watching. No one rushing me. Just me. Just the quiet. They say tomatoes grow better when you talk to them. So I did. Not with words, but with presence. Watered them every morning. Pulled weeds with soft hands. Watched for the first buds like they were little promises I hadn't dared to expect. The tomatoes didn't ask me for anything. Didn't call only when they needed help. Didn't guilt me. Didn't forget my birthday. They just grew. Slowly. Honestly. I don't need to be called Mom anymore. I'm simply Margaret, the gardener. That name feels good in my mouth again. Not attached to roles or sacrifices. Just a woman with time to herself and dirt under her nails. I walk to the market on Saturdays, chat with the baker, buy lemons, even if I don't need them, just because I can. I read books without falling asleep halfway through. I let the dishes wait in the sink if I feel like sitting in the sun instead. No one knocks on my door asking for money. No one texts me only when they're in trouble. No one forgets me, because no one's pretending to remember. It's quiet here, but not empty. The neighbor's cat visits sometimes. He sits on the porch like he owns it, tail flicking. I don't mind. We share the silence like old friends. There's a little girl down the lane who waves when she sees me watering the garden. Her mother said she thinks I'm a witch, the nice kind, who grows things and wears big hats. I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped my watering can. There's a freedom in being unknown again, in not belonging to anyone, in not being needed. People think that sounds lonely, but it's not. It's peaceful. I lived so many years in service of others, woke up early to pack lunches, worked late to pay bills, said yes when I wanted to scream no. I gave and gave, until I forgot there was a me under it all. Now I find her again in small things. A tomato ripening in the sun. A cup of tea held with both hands. The sound of the wind through the trees behind the cottage. No fancy retirement. No cruise ships. Just this quiet, blooming life I planted for myself. And you know what? It's beautiful. Not loud, not praised, but mine. I sit on the porch sometimes, rocking gently, watching the sky change colors. I think about the past, yes. About what I gave, what I lost, what I took back. But I don't sit in sorrow anymore. I sit in thanks. Because I made it here. I survived the storm. I grew new roots. And they're deep. I started writing letters the winter after I moved into the cottage. Not for anyone else. Just for me. Mornings were quiet and the kettle took its time. So I'd sit by the window with a pen and a worn notebook and write down what no one ever asked me. Not stories. Not poems. Just truth. I wrote about the long nights rocking babies while my own body begged for rest. I wrote about the time I sold my wedding ring to keep the lights on. I wrote about how it felt to be needed all the time, but rarely seen. I didn't write in rage. I didn't need to. The truth was strong enough on its own. Every word was like a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I'd write 2, sometimes 3 pages a day. Sometimes more when the rain tapped steady against the roof, like it was waiting to hear what I had to say. They tried to take my voice, so I wrote it louder. I wrote about love the kind that folds towels and remembers birthdays. And I wrote about the kind that withers when it's only ever one-sided. I wrote about silence, and how it cuts deeper than any yell. I wrote about the moment I sold the house, and how calm I felt walking away. Not triumphant, not angry, just clean. Like washing your hands after a long, messy meal. Then, one morning, I wrote them a letter. Just one. Not out of bitterness. Not to wound. But because they should know. Not the version they tell at parties. Not the softened story with excuses and misunderstandings. The truth. I started simply, I raised you with love. I helped you out of love. But love without respect is not love at all. I told them what they did. Not to shame them, but to name it. To say it plain. I wrote about the missed calls, the mortgage, the silence on Thanksgiving. I wrote about how I cried, Not because they hurt me, but because I let it happen again and again. I told them how I found a lawyer, how I read every line of the contract they thought I'd never understand, how I sold the house without blinking, because by the time I signed those papers, I was already gone. And I told them where I went, not the address, just the feeling. I went to a place where my name is mine again, where my peace isn't borrowed, where I sit in the sun with dirt under my nails and not one person asking me for anything. I didn't ask them to change. I didn't ask them to apologize. I didn't ask for anything at all. I just told the truth, folded the letter neatly, signed it Margaret. Not Mom, not Mama, just Margaret. And I mailed it. No flowers, no photos. Just one woman's voice on paper, clear, quiet, and undeniable. I don't know if they read it. I don't know if they cried, or cursed, or threw it away. But that's not why I wrote it. I wrote it because my voice matters. I wrote it because silence is no longer my burden. I wrote it because someday, maybe not now, they'll remember me not as the woman who paid their bills or held their babies, but as the woman who found herself again, alone in a little cottage, writing truth in pen. That's the legacy I leave behind. Not just money, not just decisions, but clarity. And in the end, that's louder than anything they ever said. That's louder than being forgotten. That's the power of telling your own story before someone else tells it wrong. I didn't hold a ceremony, didn't write a speech, or call anyone to say it was over. I just let go, quietly, cleanly, without a sound. Some things don't need witnesses. Some endings don't need applause. They just need to be. I woke up one morning, made my tea like always, and felt something settle inside me. Not sadness, not relief, just stillness. The kind that comes after a long storm. Not triumphant, not mournful, just calm. It was time. Time to stop rereading old messages. Time to stop checking the mail for cards that never came. Time to stop wondering what kind of stories they were telling about me to people who never knew the whole truth. I didn't block them. I didn't tell them off. I just stopped answering. Stopped picking at the past like it still had something left to give. You don't need a funeral to bury a bond. Sometimes, all you need is silence and peace. They still reach out now and then. A text here. A birthday reminder there. Little things, careful things, like dipping a toe into water they once flooded. But I've stepped out of that river. There's no anger left in me. Just distance. I remember them, of course. Memory doesn't erase that easily. But I remember myself more now. The woman I was before the giving got too heavy. Before my name was a credit line. Before my worth depended on how much I could sacrifice. That woman deserved better. And now, she has it. I've cleared my space. Donated what I didn't need. Thrown away old papers that no longer mattered. I kept a few photos. Only the ones where I looked like me. Not the servant, not the background. The ones where I smiled without trying. The garden is blooming this year. Tomatoes again. Basil. A few wildflowers I didn't plant, but welcomed anyway. They grew where they weren't expected like me. I take slow walks now. Let the wind tell me the weather. I don't rush. I don't wait. And when people ask if I hear from them, the ones who used to call me Mom when they wanted something, I just say, no, not anymore. I say it with no weight in my chest. Because the truth is, I've already said goodbye. Not with a letter, not with anger. With choice. I let go without a sound. And I'm still here, whole, strong, soft in the right places, firm in the rest. I used to think I needed closure from them. A final conversation. A proper ending. But some stories finish when you stop turning the pages. And I've closed the book, not because it wasn't important, but because I am. They'll speak my name when it's too late, when the papers are filed, when the house is long sold, when their children ask, what happened to Grandma? And they stumble for an answer that doesn't make them the villain. They'll speak my name like a puzzle they can't quite solve. They'll say, I changed. They'll say, I disappeared. They won't say I finally chose myself. They'll whisper my name at family gatherings, behind cupped hands and stiff smiles, wondering if I'll show up, wondering if I'm watching from somewhere, still waiting to forgive them. But I'm not waiting. I'm not angry. I'm just done. My story moves without them now. In every tomato I plant, in every quiet morning I spend in peace, in every other woman who sees herself in my silence and decides she doesn't need permission to walk away. I don't need to yell to be remembered. My absence will do the talking. One day, maybe years from now, they'll sit at a table and feel the empty seat like a shadow. And they'll speak my name, not in love, not in guilt, but in wonder, because I was the storm they never saw coming. And now, I'm the silence they can't forget.